What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be talking about horror movies. Yeah! I usually like this YouTube channel to be about the unpopular opinions or stuff that can usually be divisive, and today I'd like to talk to you about why horror movies tend to be some of the most unpopular films when it comes to movie fans. The way this is going to work is that I'm going to be talking about both the positives and the negatives as to why people usually love these type of horror movies and why they hate these type of horror movies. But it's a selective type of horror films that I'm going to be talking about. I'm not talking about your regular Nightmare on Elm Street film or something that's like Stephen King's It. The type of horror films that I'm going to be talking about are the ones that are art house type of horror films, because they usually be getting a lot of praise, mostly from critics, but at other times some horror fans don't seem to really dig these type of movies. And I'm going to give you guys my reasons as to why I think that these movies are so split down the middle. The first thing that I want to bring up is dread, lingering, and thrills. Let's take a movie like Hereditary, for example. Now, this is a horror film that doesn't really have an antagonist. It doesn't have a scary character like Freddy Krueger or Jason or Michael Myers. This is a movie that decides to capture what it's like for characters to go through a very tough situation, and the intense scenes and thrills play off from the uncomfortable atmosphere that they're settling in, and also the horrific situations that they usually occur in. In a dreadful film, they like to wind up the music and slowly pander around and let you know that something really terrible is about to happen, and you don't want that exact thing to happen, but then they show that exact thing that is actually going to happen. That, for some people, is actually scary. Now, the reason why it doesn't work for some people is because with atmospheres like this that are at a dread-like sensation, it usually goes a lot more slow, and it's lingering a good bit, and they rely too heavily on atmosphere and not enough on character development and story. Sometimes for a horror fan, they like to have an intense thrill ride, finding ways to escape the villain or trying to at least defeat the villain. The scary characters usually have ways of taking people out, and when art house films tend to have a slow burn and don't usually have that much going on, it can lead to the audience member being bored and not wanting to continue the rest of the film. It would make them feel like that what they're watching isn't necessarily scary at all. It's kind of a letdown. Number two, focusing on too much on the characters rather than creating an actual story. Now, character relatability is actually important in a horror film. I think horror films tend to focus on that kind of aspect a lot more often, because if an audience member relates to what's going on to a character inside a movie, they would tend to have more of an emotional attachment to those characters. We understand and we know what the characters are going through, and we know what they're talking about. And because we're able to understand them on that much of a personal level, the movie all of a sudden becomes a lot more gruesome when we're watching a horror film. But here's the problem though. If a movie is just having characters go through situations that's just really traumatizing, but adds in no story, the film would just start to feel pretentious. Take the movie Us, for example. The movie is about identity. Because this whole movie is set up as a personal, deep character study of people who are trying to identify themselves, and you get a very big personal attachment to those characters, then you can enjoy the movie because the movie does a really good job having all of the characters be the main central attention and the main focus of this entire film. And we can enjoy it because they're doing really good character studies. However, if that's all the movie is doing, and there isn't necessarily much of a plot going on within the film, then the movie doesn't necessarily work. Now, the concept itself is good for the film, and it is nice to see that type of aspect done in a horror film. However, if that's all you're focusing on and you don't necessarily have a story built around it, then that means you're relying too much on the character study of the film and how it fits within the scenario that our characters are in. Like, take The Haunting of Hill House, for example. This is a show where it's all about character studies, but there's a story within it. Each episode in the show dives into the situations that all of our characters are in, and the personalities of all the characters, and how they get to where they were at from point A to point C. The story is about how once a happy family just all of a sudden turned broken, and sometimes they would blame the house that they lived in, or they would blame themselves. With the movie Us, it's about this family meeting some people, and then weird stuff happens. Now, to some people, they won't mind that, but to other people, they will see it as pretentious, because the movie isn't necessarily doing that much except trying to be a film that is trying to be thought-provoking or very deep. And sometimes horror fans don't really want to watch a scary movie for that. And the last one that I am going to mention is probably the most troubling one: creating shock value. This is the most troubling one to do because horror films rely a lot on things that are supposed to be shocking. Things can get gory, really messed up, and it can turn out to be pretty good, but if it's not used right, it can end up making some people angry, and they would feel like that what they've seen is just really stupid. Movies like The Thing, The Exorcist, Stephen King's It, they have some very shocking and gory stuff in there, but they're all there for a reason. They work within the story that they're trying to tell. But with a movie like, say, Midsommar, that's directed by Ari Aster, the same person that did Hereditary, this movie puts in a lot of shocking and disturbing imagery, but some of it doesn't feel like it has a reason to do so. There's something that happens at the beginning of the movie, and I won't say what happens, and it really caught me off guard, and I was wondering, oh my goodness, where is this going to go? And it barely played into anything that's within the story. There are times where the movie reminded me of what happened at the very beginning of the film, but in terms of what happened at the very beginning, it had no reason to be in the film whatsoever. There was no reason for that scene to happen at the very beginning, except they go on a journey and then other random stuff happens. Random shock value is not good for me, mostly because it feels like that they're only getting away with it because they're a part of the horror genre. And you know what? Horror films can have really disgusting and disturbing things in there too, but that's because they put them in there for a reason. If you're not putting them in there for a reason, you're just being disgusting, and you're kind of making me not want to watch the movie again. But that, guys, is the reason why I think art house horror films are usually divisive, and they get to have the horror fandom just split into two. But what do you guys think about this? Is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that you would like to add? Or do you think that I'm wrong about this? Put them down in the comment box below, and like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.